Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Focus on UATV. While some voices in the West suggest Ukraine should surrender parts of Donbass to appease Putin, Ukraine is delivering real, kinetic sanctions, destroying Russia's oil export capacity for the long term. At the same time, the Kremlin keeps pushing ultimatums, talks stall, and Moscow restores energy ties with India while the Shadow Fleet faces growing pressure. Ukraine, however, stays focused. Our defense industry grows stronger every day, and new partnerships with Gulf countries on air defense technologies are opening up. We fight smart, adapt fast, and keep the initiative where it matters most. How Ukrainian strikes and Western actions are hitting Russia's oil revenues hard, and President Zelensky's clear stance on negotiations, an Easter ceasefire, and building new defense partnerships. Let's get into it. Even as Russia tries to reroute its oil through new markets like India, the pressure keeps mounting. Canada has sanctioned another 100 Shadow Fleet tankers. The UK is ready to intercept vessels in its waters, and Ukrainian drone strikes have knocked out around 40% of Russia's export-oriented oil production capacity. Estonian intelligence confirms the blows to Baltic ports are serious. Watch how these combined actions directly reduce the money flowing into Putin's war machine.
Canada has added another 100 tankers from Russia's Shadow Fleet to its sanctions list, announced Foreign Minister Anita Anand ahead of the G7 meeting in France. In total, Canada has already imposed sanctions on more than 600 vessels of the Shadow Fleet. To increase pressure on the Kremlin, the United Kingdom will intercept and inspect tankers carrying sanctioned oil in its waters. In response, the Russian embassy in London has threatened that Russia will take all necessary measures to protect its national interests. Intercepting the vessels is a blow to the Kremlin, which uses the fleet to finance attacks on Ukraine, the UK Ministry of Defense stated.
We have seen that the joint measures we have taken, together with our allies, against shadow shipping have helped reduce Russia's oil revenues by a quarter. We can do more. And today's confirmation by the Prime Minister that we are prepared to do more, that we have the legal and military capabilities to do so, and that we have discussed this with our allies, such as the JEF countries with whom he is meeting today, is a signal to Putin that he will not be able to sail his illegal sanctioned vessels through British waters in the future without the risk of us seizing them. John Healey, UK Defense Secretary, in an interview with Sky News.
While Europe is introducing new sanctions and detaining tankers, Moscow is restoring energy cooperation with India. The countries are preparing to resume direct supplies of liquefied natural gas for the first time since the beginning of Russia's war against Ukraine, Reuters reports. An oral agreement has already been reached at ministerial level. According to 3 sources familiar with the discussions, officials have also agreed to further increase crude oil sales to India. These sales could double compared to January levels and reach approximately 40% of India's total imports within about a month.
Any tanker that sets sail today, a Russian tanker heading to the Indochina region, to India, or to the China Sea, all these tankers are carrying oil that is actually being sold at a very good price. The longer the war in the Persian Gulf continues, the more money Putin will earn. This needs to be understood very clearly. And today's desire by Starmer, today's desire by Britain to begin pursuing the shadow tanker fleet is precisely connected to the fact that in conditions of a local shortage, the Russians are selling oil at much higher prices than usual.
Despite the new agreements with India, around 40% of Russia's export-oriented oil production capacities have been put out of action as a result of Ukrainian attacks and the detention of Russian shadow fleet tankers, Reuters reports. This is the most serious disruption to oil supplies in modern Russian history. After Ukrainian drone attacks on export ports in the Baltic Sea, oil shipments were interrupted. At the export port in Novorossiysk, loading is being carried out below planned levels.
Please keep the pressure on Russia. Its tankers and shadow fleet must not feel safe in European waters. I thank Denmark and Sweden and France for detaining these vessels, a clear demonstration that enforcement is not only possible but effective. Now we must go further. These tankers must not just be stopped, they must not be used to bypass international law. We need joint action to create strong laws in Europe that allow countries to block Russian tankers and confiscate the oil.
Estonian intelligence has noted that the consequences of Ukrainian strikes on ports in the Leningrad region have effectively halted Russian oil exports via this route.
This is undoubtedly a serious blow to Russia, since the Russian Federation exports 40 to 50% of its petroleum products through the ports of Ust-Luga and Primorsk. At least in the short term, this will significantly affect Russia's revenues. In a situation where the retreat of ice in the Baltic Sea and higher oil prices would have allowed these ports to be used even more actively and profitably, Ukraine chose the timing of the strike very successfully. At least temporarily, Russia's revenues from oil exports will decrease, and therefore so will the financing of its war against Ukraine.
Despite Moscow's attempts to redirect exports and maintain revenues through new markets, the pressure of sanctions, strikes on infrastructure, and restrictions on the shadow fleet are having a tangible effect. The reduction in oil revenues directly affects the Kremlin's ability to finance the war against Ukraine. Therefore, further strengthening of sanctions and control over their enforcement remain key tools for containing Russian aggression. Reported by Karina Lalayan, UATV News.
And while the battlefield and sanctions front keep delivering results, diplomacy continues. President Zelensky makes it clear he is ready for talks in any format and even an Easter ceasefire, but only with dignity and independence preserved. The real strength at the table comes from strength on the ground and in the air. That's why Ukraine is building new defense partnerships with Gulf countries and securing additional air defense capabilities. See how Ukraine balances readiness for peace with unbreakable resolve to protect our future.
The fact that Moscow continues to speak the language of ultimatums and shows no readiness for compromise does not mean that the negotiation process to end the war has reached a deadlock, believes the president of Ukraine.
We talk with the American side every day. Our negotiation team is in contact with its counterparts. Nevertheless, we face this difficulty. It feels as if we are mediators in this process rather than a party to the war. We are working to ensure that meetings take place, that they are held somewhere, in Europe, in Turkey, in Switzerland, anywhere. We are ready even in the Middle East. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine.
On February 18th, the third round of trilateral negotiations between Ukraine, the United States, and Russia concluded in Geneva. The next meeting had to be postponed due to the escalation in the Middle East. However, it is precisely because of the Kremlin's position that there is no real progress towards peace. Volodymyr Zelensky is convinced. At the same time, Kyiv is ready for negotiations in any format and in any location, except Russia and Belarus, the head of state stated.
America proposed, and we are grateful to them, to meet on their territory. We supported this. The Russians said they would not meet in the United States. Moscow proposed Turkey or Switzerland. America replied that the negotiation team is currently not leaving the United States. We are ready to support the United States. We are ready to support a meeting in Switzerland, in Turkey, or wherever the partners are prepared. Right now, the ball is in the court of the United States of America and Russia. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, in comments to the media.
Kyiv is also ready for an Easter truce, Volodymyr Zelensky assured.
We have supported any formats for ending the war. You know this. But only when the dignity and independence of our state are not compromised. In addition, a ceasefire in any format, both full and energy-related. We are also ready for a ceasefire during the Easter holidays. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, in comments to the media.
However, to be strong at the negotiating table, one must be strong on the battlefield. President Volodymyr Zelensky is convinced strategic cooperation in defense technologies with Middle Eastern countries could significantly strengthen Kyiv's position. The Ukrainian delegation signed agreements during its trip to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Jordan.
Перше, це нас цікавить.
We're basically discussing several areas. First, we're interested in ensuring that beyond aid, this is a mutually beneficial partnership. There are several areas. The first area is weapons, manufacturing, exchanging expertise, and exchanging scarce resources that one country lacks, but the other has. The second area is long-term energy cooperation. Over the next 10 years, we will engage in joint production and build production lines in both Ukraine and these countries.
One of the central topics of the negotiations was the need to strengthen air defense. Ukraine is sharing its expertise in defending against massive combined attacks with its partners and is negotiating the opening of arms exports. This concerns not only interceptor drones, Volodymyr Zelensky assured. The Ukrainian delegation is negotiating alternatives to American ballistic interceptor missiles. There is a severe global shortage of PAC-3 missiles for Patriot air defense systems. Only about 60 are produced per month, and the majority are being sent to the Middle East. According to the Spanish newspaper El País, país. Following President Volodymyr Zelensky's visit to Spain, Madrid promised to transfer PAC-2 missiles for Patriot systems to Kyiv. They are currently in service with the country's Air Defense Artillery Regiment. The Spanish Ministry of Defense plans to upgrade them to the PAC-3 version. Reported by Kristina Dombrovska, UATV News.
That's today's In Focus. Ukraine refuses to trade land for false peace, while delivering real blows to Russia's war economy and building tomorrow's defense capabilities today. Our defenders and leaders show the world what true strength looks like, adapting faster than the aggressor, striking precisely, and standing firm for a just outcome. Thank you for watching. If you value clear, unfiltered truth from Ukraine, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this with friends who stand for real courage. Together, we keep moving forward. See you next time. Stay focused, stay unbreakable.